and welcome. This is The Interview, where we try to get to the esoteric questions not being tackled in the national media that reveal what's really going on. Well, obviously, it's been a huge national story, really an international story, the Epstein files. Controversies heating up again, with pressure mounting on federal agencies and politicians over transparency, accountability, and whether powerful names are being protected. Today, I'm speaking with former FBI Special Agent Ken Gray about how investigations like this unfold and what the public should understand about the sealed evidence and what is actually fueling the renewed wave of conspiracies. Thanks for joining us, Ken.
Hilary, glad to be with you again.
So now we're seeing a bipartisan duo that are pushing to require Attorney General Pam Bondi to release everything related to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So I'm wondering if you think that has teeth, because there are obviously, you know, as a former federal agent, limitations on what the DOJ can legally do and is required to do. What say you?
Sure. So I think there's a complication here, and that is that the interview with Ghislaine Maxwell may very well open up new cases. And as those new cases get open, that will require protecting the evidence for those cases for any trial that might follow. So any desire to be able to reveal everything of the Epstein files that are currently in hand, that we've been hearing promises that that was going to occur, may have all been derailed by this latest go-round with the interview with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, previously, I think back in May, Pam Bondi had briefed the president that his name did appear in the so-called Epstein files. And at that time, you know, the suggestion was made that obviously you don't necessarily have to have any wrongdoing that's occurred if you're named. And therefore, it follows that there are a lot of people who could find themselves in a precarious situation when they're not charged with anything. They may have just been on a flight or been a contributor to some cause tied to Epstein. Is it fair to expose all of those people, including high-level political officials, including the President of the United States and maybe former presidents, who may have had no wrongdoing? What do you think are the ethics there?
Yeah, I do have problems with that myself, that, as you say, there may be people who have no exposure as far as the trafficking of young girls to some of Epstein's colleagues there. And that by being associated with it, by having some previous contact either through a charity or through some university, that they are all of a sudden tainted by this, their name appearing there, that seems somehow to be wrong for the government to be exposing that. But that being said, Commerce, before the House went out on the summer recession break, hit the speaker with a subpoena for all Epstein files. And so how much is actually going to be provided to Commerce as a result of that subpoena, we will see how that plays out. But you will recall that the president promised in the latest go-round to have Bondi release all credible information. So the term credible in that case seems to be something that will cause some files to be released, some not to be released, some type of system to review and expose files that could be released and those that could not be released. So there's a number of different things that will be going on at the same time.
Yeah, and who decides that? Who decides what gets released and what doesn't get released? How do you comb through all of that evidence and decide what's going to be damning and what's not? I'm told that the file is not something you can put on a desk, as was previously asserted, and I think that was sort of a euphemism or a metaphor, but that literally these files fill a room. Who is a decider about what gets released and what doesn't get released?
So, you know, normally courts would be meeting with lawyers to make a decision about what has to be turned over and what does not have to be turned over. But the files are right now in the possession of DOJ. So one would think that DOJ probably has the biggest claim to being the one to do the first review to be able to say what will be released and what will not be released. But some of the information is currently in court proceedings. They're currently under seal. And so it's up to the judges in those cases about what to unseal and to release and what not to release.
Aren't there some evidentiary gaps here? To hear from the Department of Justice that there is no client list now, that doesn't seem to square with a lot of people who looked at the previous evidence that there might be. And then we have Ghislaine Maxwell now talking about these 100 people who were allegedly on the list. There is clearly some sort of epistemic imbalance there that it's very hard to reconcile. Who is correct? And what does Ghislaine Maxwell have to lose at this point? You would think that perhaps she's the one who's telling the truth, and maybe the Department of Justice is not, because of already the information that's been provided to the press and leaked publicly. Who's right here?
Yeah.
Is there a client list?
So you keep on hearing this term client list be thrown around. I don't think there is any single document or set of documents that you can point to and say this is the client list. I think that's been used as a euphemism. In actual, now Epstein had a address book, and that address book was seized back in 2006 when he was arrested down in Miami, and so that exists. And DOJ went through that list. And it's my understanding, in fact, that address book was up for auction here just recently. And so the idea that somewhere within the documents that were seized out of his New York residence right before his arrest is going to have a list of clients, so to speak, I don't think that exists. But what does exist is interviews with victims that would show who were the people who victimized them. That is, that victims identifying individuals that they may have had sex with. And so that could be combed together by going through all those interviews and produce such a list. But I don't think that Epstein himself had an Excel spreadsheet showing who had sex with who and on what dates that occurred. I think it was a euphemism that was thrown around and then was understood to be an actual document that existed. When Pam Bondi said, "I have it on my desk," she was referring in general to the files that she had gathered from the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, and that was what was in her office waiting to be gone over. And it was not actually in her office itself, but instead was within the possession of DOJ.
Yeah, the president directed the Department of Justice to unseal the grand jury transcripts. And under federal rules, specifically Rule 6, the only way the grand jury testimony can be pierced is if there is an immense public need. How in the world could this classify as that? I mean, maybe you would say that it definitely would. Certainly under the umbrella of secrecy, which is why grand juries exist, you can still prosecute people. I mean, we have a very rich history of prosecuting criminals under that umbrella. So how can you make the argument, a compelling and cogent argument, that there is an intense or imminent public need here to release all of the testimony, including maybe unredacted names, victims' names, et cetera?
I think it is going to be a very hard argument to try to argue that there is this compelling need to release this information. Yes, the public has a real desire to see such a list, but does that overcome the need for secrecy for grand juries? I think that this is a matter that will probably wind its way to the Supreme Court before we actually see an answer to that.
Let's talk a little more about Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, which is really unusual to see this kind of bipartisanship. And of course, the president has said that through obviously people who were speaking on his behalf, that this is just all political, et cetera. And yet you do have Republicans and Democrats coming together to see some sort of change here, which isn't always the case in Washington, to put it mildly. So it does seem to add additional credence, at least politically, so I'm going to ask you to sort of put on your political hat to some extent, that this has really struck a nerve with people. I mean, you're talking about the most vulnerable people amongst us, children, and the exploitation of them over years and in many circumstances. And the American people, and I think the world, want some kind of justice, and that's why I think you're seeing Republicans and Democrats coming together. What sort of political impetus and force do you see behind perhaps this push?
So Thomas Massie has been working a deal with Ro Khanna to force the hand of the speaker to allow them to get access to this data to submit a subpoena for this information. They were going to use a discharge petition to do so. That would say that if you have a vote and reach 218 votes, then this goes forward and takes control of the House to push this forward. It does not rely upon the Speaker of the House to allow this to come to the floor. And so Thomas Massie has been working with the Democrats for this, and that is a very political decision. You know, that the fact that the Democrats, who over the 4 years that they had control during the Biden administration, if they were interested in Epstein files, they could have done it then. But all of a sudden, because they see this as a political opportunity, they are all of a sudden jumping onto the Epstein bandwagon here. And Thomas Massie, because of his desire to have complete transparency, is joining forces with them. But I think Comer's has really rendered that to be a non-issue now, because Comer's has also, before the recess, he got the subpoena in for those same documents. And so I think that Comer's has overtaken Massie's and Ro Khanna's plan to try to force the revelation of these documents.
What is the likelihood that the president could be subpoenaed on this?
You know, the president can be subpoenaed to appear before Congress. We've seen that before, but you would need to be able to show the need to have him come there, and I don't think that they have achieved that bar to be able to force that issue at this point. I think this is very early on before you see something like that. But instead, I think that again, the debriefing of Ghislaine Maxwell here really has thrown a real monkey wrench into this work, because of the fact that if she revealed information that will lead to opening up new cases, then these new cases will take precedence as far as protection of documents to support that. So I think that we may see all of this be put on hold until that aspect gets pursued.
Well, and on that front, if Maxwell does hold the key to perhaps defining some sort of structural understanding and idea of the network that was involved here, why hasn't the DOJ articulated some kind of prosecutorial and evidentiary framework that situates her testimony as central? Because she is obviously still living and able to, through whatever witness she bore, to perhaps indict a lot of people. It seems like she's really low-hanging fruit, and the DOJ is not exploiting that. Why not?
She has been there and has not been interviewed all these years, and that is a real good question. Is that it is almost as if you have Epstein is dead, and you have Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in prison. And so as far as DOJ was concerned at that time, this was a closed case, that there was nothing more that needed to be done with this matter. And so the fact that this is now coming in again to the forefront, in part is due to the efforts on the part of MAGA, which this was a promise to them during the campaign trail, of revealing all these secrets. That is, we're going to see all the real dirt behind this, things that have been kept from the public. And so this is being forced back once again into the public's attention, and there's no stopping it down. President Trump attempted to do that because it was derailing his own agenda. So he said he's been dead for all these years. Why are we wasting our time when we have all these other efforts going forward? But that was not being taken up by the MAGA side. They clearly pushed back that the promise was made to them, and they expected that promise to be kept.
How central do you think the birthday book is going to be to all this, which is now also at the center of a lawsuit involving President Trump suing the Wall Street Journal for the allegations that he sent this as being described as bawdy letter to Epstein involving the drawing of a nude woman. And now House Democrats, for example, have tried to get an unredacted version of this birthday book, which might have a wealth of evidence in it. Are we focusing on the wrong thing? It is a very small piece of evidence in a wide sea, a swath of an evidentiary pool.
Well, really, we're interested in who was it that was having sex with these underage girls that was arranged by Jeffrey Epstein. And so this seems to be very much a sideshow going on and may be distracting from the main interest. Really, you want to be able to focus in on who were the people who were taking advantage of these underage girls. And that's really what the public desires to know, not who sent a birthday greeting to Epstein as part of a large collection of well wishes on the parts of many people who were in contact with him. You know, it's a shame that Virginia Giuffre committed suicide back in April of this year. She would be one of the leading people that would be glad to see some effort being made to reveal some of these people who victimize her and others of her age group.
Yeah, I suspect that many people have started to focus on the conspiracy sort of, it seems like a lexicon even that's forming, because so many folks have died in very strange ways. And, you know, you never want to be the person who has a tinfoil hat on, but it seems like it's more than coincidence. Is there anything you think to that? I mean, you know, the meme that overtook the internet that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. There are a lot of people who absolutely today, who are very reasonable people, look at the evidence and say, no, he didn't. What do you think?
So the medical examiner that was brought in by Jeffrey Epstein's brother is a very, very well-known medical examiner, retired NYPD medical examiner for New York, worked closely with NYPD for 35 years, I think it was. He looked at the autopsy and report, and he said that he believed that this was more consistent with murder than it was a suicide, because of the fact of certain bones being broken in the neck that do not normally get broken in the process of a hanging type suicide. And so that certainly adds credence to the idea that maybe Epstein did not kill himself. But at the same time, that cell block, the wing was shared with a number of other inmates at the time who certainly would have talked if they had heard anything going on. So it's hard to believe that that he may have been killed by somebody coming into that wing, even though the people that were supposed to be watching that cell wing were not, that they were busy on the internet and not doing their rounds as they were supposed to. And so a lot of questions from that aspect. But as far as the crime scene goes, The FBI does not normally do murder investigations. They were the ones who came in, and they did not get there until 6 hours after Epstein was found. Epstein was moved to the dispensary at the time, and the crime scene had been altered, and then it was not really processed very well. And so the crime scene, as it were, would be next to impossible to be able to make any type of determination from that. And so, it's hard to say based upon the crime scene and the facts as are known. But again, it leaves one to have questions about it.
Yeah, and the Epstein team did hire an independent pathologist who looked at the evidence and found that the neck fractures and the injuries to the thyoid bone and some cartilage as well, that might suggest manual strangulation as opposed to hanging. And so, there are people who look at evidence like that and think something is still off. There are more questions. I mean, and you even pointed to what the FBI did and why they were called in. If you had to, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, because I know it's a question that's been asked of a lot of people, and it's a difficult one, and nobody knows the answer, at least none of us who are pontificating in the media. Is there enough evidence to credibly believe that maybe Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself?
So that's the reason why I brought up the fact that the crime scene was so badly handled that I don't think you can make a determination based upon what was seen there inside his cell. It was hours later. It had been disturbed. His body had been moved. A leading expert medical examiner questioned the end result from the medical examiner's office. The initial report said pending, and then later got changed to suicide. So, it's hard to say. But when you look at a case like this here, you have to base it upon evidence. And the evidence was so poorly managed and the crime scene disturbed that it's impossible to say.
Let me ask you what you think we're missing here. What is the media not touching on, not delving into about the Epstein case that might really illuminate what's actually going on?
Well, the interesting aspect of this is the fact that Jeffrey Epstein has this mysterious cloak of potentially being involved with intelligence, that he may have been somehow being run by Mossad, or that he may have been a source of information by Mossad, that he was developing information on all these different high-powered individuals from government, from the media, from legal aspects, from universities, and that he was collecting up information that could be used to have these people assist Israel somehow. That's one aspect. The other aspect is the financial side. One of the things you do in any type of case like this that has questions about finances is follow the money. He made a lot of money with no real apparent reason that he was getting the large money he had from making recommendations on finance, on stock tips, on how to hide money or how to recover money. And so I think following the money would be the big thing that would possibly lead to some answers, both on the intelligence side and also on the criminal side. But I think that instead of seeing the end of Epstein here, the end of the Epstein files, I think we may be seeing a whole new chapter, because Ghislaine Maxwell may have just dished the dirt that is necessary blow open this entirely and start a whole new collection of indictments out of information if actual investigations are done on all those names.
Yeah, and there was some investment specifically in an Israeli surveillance tech company, and that further bolstered the ties, plus, as you mentioned, Ghislaine Maxwell. Do you think it's credible that maybe he was collecting information on behalf of Mossad?
So, he had Ehud Barak there stay at his residence in New York. And so, that certainly shows some type of connection. Whether the connection is just simply one of friendship and trying to help Israel out, that's one thing. It's another thing that he might be tasked with specifically targeting individuals to be able to come up with compromise, to be able to compromise individuals to have them do things that Mossad wanted, provide things that Mossad needed. That is a completely different matter that has never fully been explored. During his first trial back in 2006, I think it was, he ended up with a sweetheart deal because of the implication that he was intelligence.
Yeah. And then there's the broader question. I mean, I hate to call on Noam Chomsky, but you could even talk about the fact that there is this prevailing undercurrent of the media, powerful elites working together to protect one another, and that is ultimately what will keep this network concealed from the public, and that this degree of opacity is really grown out of or comes out of the fact that powerful people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, left or right, are going to protect one another. And that's why we haven't seen all of this exposed, that people are colluding and working together, and that there are a lot of people who don't want, even if they weren't necessarily involved in criminal activity, as you said, the heart of it, having sex with underage girls, or we should just say girls because girls are underage, but they are willing at all costs to protect themselves. Isn't that, from a broader perspective, what this is really about?
So that is why MAGA is insisting on this being revealed. It is showing that that the system can protect its own, and that we want complete transparency is the cry. And so President Trump was elected in part due to this promise of transparency. Pam Bondi the Attorney General went to New York to gather the information and bring it back because the U.S. Attorney's Office was sitting on it. And that was supposed to be the process of gathering up to reveal it. And yet then all of a sudden we hear there's nothing here that can be prosecuted and that there is no client list. And that did not go over well with the public. And so now you see the House subpoenaing the DOJ to get that information to reveal it. You see the House talking about bringing Ghislaine Maxwell and having her testify before Congress. And whether this runs up against trying to have DOJ pursue cases on the individuals that are named, we will see how that plays out. But I agree with you 110% that it appears that the system is trying to protect itself against these revelations, even if it's not real compromising information. Just simply the fact that if you are somehow related to Jeffrey Epstein, you are tainted, and the public then will treat you as such.
Yeah. All of this is what many people have described as the deep state. It's just this big bureaucracy of powerful elites, right, that works without any necessary ties to those who are elected, but just seems to trek on, and hopefully justice will be served, and these victims will get to see it. We want to thank you, former FBI Special Agent Ken Gray. We appreciate you always joining us. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.